Thank you so much for watching and listening to The Climb. My name is Jon Sirakis, and this is brought to you by the Digital Mastermind. Digital Mastermind is a group of agency owners that get together on at least a bi-weekly basis. We have a yearly event. We're a mastermind group for agency owners, technologists, and marketers where we get together to help each other solve the biggest problems and stay ahead of the curve. So if you'd like to join, go ahead and shoot me an email, Jon, Jon, at digitalmastermind.com. Today, we have a fantastic show. We were talking about how to get more revenue from your current clients, and we had the honor to speak with Steph Hermanson from Atomic Social. And in that conversation, we talked about dashboards, we talked about client relationships, even a little bit of dirt and some of our past experiences. But before we get into all that, Dave, why don't you come out here and join us?
Hey, how's it going?
It's going well, man. So what'd you think of the episode?
So I liked it because I like the topic of dashboards. I mean, we, in what we do for our clients is a lot of times business systems and workflow processing. And so a component of that is creating dashboards to provide that 10,000 foot view for the client, whatever project we're working on. So for example, we have a client that is big into real estate surveys. And so we created a dashboard of how much you're selling per quarter, how much you're selling per month, how much you're selling per week, wait times on the staff, how long it takes staff to get through a workflow and stuff like that. So it gives him, really good insight. So what I liked, with what she did is they're using a third-party tool. They're not building these dashboards from scratch by hand and using smart tools, but then helping the client identify the data points and get them into the dashboard. So that's always going to be the hardest thing is where's your source data? Now, when we do it, we control the source. So that's why our source data gets in there. So
yeah, and what I like about it is creating that transparency based on the work that's being done. I know there's a lot of marketing companies that will go into that black box. You don't know what's happening, but you're still getting results. So right. That's something that's inherently important with what she does as well as what we do. And I think one thing on our end is we don't have necessarily a standardized process. We really conform to what the client wants. I know in some cases we use DataBox or we've created the custom solutions that you have or everything in there in between. But at the end of the day, having that is like having the levers that you can pull on your business. Because when you can see how many sales came in or why you were down, you can continually dig in on those nodes.
And we say this all the time. You cannot improve what is not measured. Right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So if you're not measuring it, how do you improve it?
Yeah.
So I think that the key is just what KPIs should you pay attention to and which ones should you ignore? Which ones are noise and which ones signal?
I remember sitting down with a client one time. We were talking about all the KPIs, and it was insane what this guy wanted to cover. So, and this was earlier in the career. So we built this, but we built it into an Excel sheet that had to get reported on, and they were paying for all the time. He not ever looked at one of those reports, dude. It was like this mental exercise that he just got this pleasure out of. But the beauty of that is that I believe that's when that term KPI was resonant for me. And that's where we really started digging in and just seeing how everything moved to the point where we were committing to ROI increases, which is something that I got away from because there's other things in somebody's business that affect those. But those are the beauty of all of those tools, the things that you can do from a promise standpoint and a delivery standpoint when you have all that data and you can execute the way you need to execute.
Yeah, and we've talked, multiple times on The Climb here about my old job that used to work in the business intelligence industry. And it's really, really interesting. A dashboard is always, past looking. You're looking at past results.
Yep, lagging.
Business intelligence is using past results to predict the future results. And we would dig into these formulas and they'd be crazy because the end result, what we would create and put into this platform is an Excel worksheet that was like usually 18 tabs long. Everything's connected, everything's referencing off another. And then we would then input that into the system. And that's how we would build the business intelligence. But to be able to know that if you just increase doing one oil change a week could result in $45,000 of revenue at the end of the year is awesome. And nobody used it.
Was it AI?
Nah, it was just predictive and, it's just formulas.
So what did the team look like that built that and put that together? Was that like a small team, or was that like an enterprise level?
It was definitely developers. We're just using Excel's engine to create the formulas, and then we would ingest those into a Java application.
Got it. I don't think enough businesses actually, though, take the time, whether it's with a consultant or themselves, where they're actually looking at, all right, what if I tweak this one input? What does that generate?
Right. And we designed this with the head of dealer support of Ford. And I mean, he was just a maniac with his control. I mean, he controlled every data point. And then because of his ego, he'd be like, no, throw that all away. We got to do it. We're doing another one. And we're like, oh God, dude.
What's funny is that's good for revenue, but that's terrible for morale.
Correct.
Because we see like, oh, all right, we got to do all this effort. Nobody likes continually pushing that rock up that proverbial hill. It's like, dude, I want that rock to just go down the hill and we are done.
And because this dude's ego was all in it, and I get it. I guess at those high levels of major, corporations, that it is about ego, but he came up with the name Blueprint for it, right? And so everything had to look like an architect's blueprint. So you're on a website, but it
Talking
like
about a cliche. Jeez.
Yeah, it had like blue lines, and everything had to match that. So everything we built had to look like a blueprint.
Oh man, yeah. I've met the type too many times where, and no matter what you bring in, I can't think of the psychological term for it, but whatever new information you bring in, they're not even going to see that. They are the exception. Like, oh no,
they take it, and that's their idea.
Right.
So he's like, I really like your idea, but I made it look like a blueprint, so now it's mine.
I had this theory that I used to monitor customer or client behavior where I would say an idea in a meeting and they'd be like, no, that's terrible. And it was 90 days later, they would call back like, all right, hey, John, you got a minute? Is now a good time? Like, yeah, that's fine. So I have this idea. I'm like, that's my fucking idea. Like,
yeah, where did you get it from?
Yeah, and I would say like, yeah, do you remember us talking about this or something? Like, I was like, all right. So I realized don't ever just take credit for it. Just sell whatever the execution is necessary to get that idea moving forward.
Yep.
Well, do we have anything else that we need to say in this pre-show before we get into our guest with Steph Hermanson?
Well, I'll ask you this. What is there any dashboard product or dashboard-like thing that you're using in your day-to-day?
We use SharpSpring, we use Pipedrive, and depending on with the DMG, we have some other tools. But as far as the day-to-day, I'd say it would be those two. As far as clients, we use for the one that comes up the most is DataBox.
Right. I would, we've talked multiple times that, I have a pretty awesome, Google spreadsheet that we put all our KPIs in. And we've talked to other guests that measure their stuff weekly, and we only do it monthly. But that kind of creates my dashboard for running the business, knowing, what we're doing and what our budgets are for sales and marketing. And it's kind of all just a homegrown tool. So, but I do believe in having a dashboard and having that data available.
Yep. I agree. I also think it's the people, what they're committed to, and them knowing the numbers. Because there's one thing where it just becomes noise. It's like, oh, I have a dashboard that's in front of me. Right. But there's still people that are going to speed and they're not going to pay attention to when they're running out of gas. I think having somebody verbally commit to like, okay, we have a $250,000 goal for this month. Okay, well, what are all the things that have to happen in between that? And then the people that are doing those things commit. And that's one of the things I love, that they've built their company around that type of mentality. And that's one of the things that we use to work with our people.
Absolutely.
Boom. All right. So go ahead and check out this episode when it's over, or anywhere in between. Go ahead and comment, like, share. We greatly appreciate it. And if you'd like to join the DMG, go ahead and shoot me an email, john@digitalmastermind.com. Thank you so much. So, all right, Steph, thank you so much for joining us.
My pleasure. I'm glad to be here. Thanks for having me on.
So I'd like to start out with your climb, your journey. How did you get here?
Oh, man, that's such a big question because we could go in so many different ways. How dare you? Oh, man. I usually lean very heavily on my upbringing in a military house. So I have always we've been a military brat and I'm only 33 and I've lived in 20 different places, been to 49 of the 50 states. We have family spread out everywhere. So being around people, not being afraid to have a conversation with a stranger so that you won't be alone in a new place for the next 9 months that you might be there, right? That's always just been ingrained in how I operate. So jumping in, learning new things, being around people that are smarter than I am and consuming information has always been important. So that kind of has been an ideal that I grew up with, and I've taken it with me through everything that I've done. I've always been big about try new things. So in another life, I was a flight attendant, and I got to do fun things there. And I've worked in banking and in healthcare, and finally settled in when I discovered that my love really centers around the ability of technology to connect people. So early adoption of things like MySpace, right? When MySpace was a thing, and started creating layouts because you could manipulate that whole platform back in the day, and it didn't have to be what MySpace said it was. So I would build layouts in my college dorm room and sell it, to other people who wanted one, and build custom ones. And I was a military kid, so I had friends everywhere. So things like when Facebook came out and MySpace was there, I got to connect with people, and just building communities in a digital way that's just a piece of my personality. And then discovered that I could turn it into more of a business and not just fun layout building down the road.
Right on. So being a military brat, I don't know if that's like a term you would like to.
It is. It's an industry term, military brat.
What's your best icebreaker having to move between all these different places?
Oh, man. I mean, with military kids, it's always just, where'd you come from? Where are you going? Because usually, you've just come from someplace new. Everybody's going through the same transitions. And usually, that what's up on the docket next. We just got here and we know we're about to go someplace else. So it's like comparing that list of all right, I've been to Europe and I have been to Louisiana for, 6 months, and we went here. Like, oh, I'm going there next. Where should I go? You just kind of collaborate and keep moving.
So I wasn't in a military family, but we moved around a lot as a kid. And one of the weird things that I discovered as I went from school to school to school was that I felt like there was only a small handful of personalities that existed. And I always found it extremely interesting that at the next school I went to, the people that had those, like, for example, the last school, that kid was a popular kid. But in this school, that personality combination isn't. And did you ever pick up on anything like that?
I did. That's really interesting that you bring that up, right? You kind of get used to one scenario, right? One way of thinking, one group of people, and the kind of archetypes and everything. Yeah. And then you're like, all right, I got it. I got to figure it out. And you get to the next one, and you're like, y'all changed it on me. Okay. Right. All right. I know I was on an airplane for a little while and I missed a meeting. All right. We'll catch up and we'll keep going. Yeah, absolutely. I saw the same things. Like in some places, sports were highly valued. Well, in other places, it was all about the band, right? People go to the football games for the band, right? They don't go for the football team, right? Kind of just really amazing how it fluctuated between sports and arts or community service, even where it was like, well, everyone's connected here. We help each other out, right? It's not about personal achievement.
And do you find that actually helps you in business today, being able to read the room and deal with all kinds of different people?
Absolutely. I lean very heavily on that, my background being a military kid, and being able to adapt to new situations, whether it was with our family, right, in a new country, new schools, and, new personalities, to what I can do now, so that I can pick up at and very industry, I was for a client, we went to a railroad conference, right? Railroad engineering. Like, that is not my space, but I know what I was there to do to accomplish for my client. And I can adapt to that situation and act like I've been there, make friends, make connections, and do what I need to do for my client and for us. And then tomorrow I can go hang out with a bunch of digital marketers, right? And then the day after that, we can go focus in on real estate. You just adapt to what's going to happen in front of you. Like
chameleon, just blend in.
Yes, exactly.
So what is your day?
Don't just like disappear into the background.
Right. We can flash the colors. You can change. You can stand out when you want. You're a chameleon. You're in control of it.
It's true. Yeah, there you go.
So you're chief revenue officer now, right?
I am.
So what does that entail exactly?
Yeah, so I'm the Chief Revenue Officer for Atomic Revenue, and we are revenue operations consulting. So my role as the revenue officer of a revenue-focused company, right, focuses both internally and with our clients. My job is the connection point between the marketing department and the sales department and our partner programs, and how that bucket of all that information of everything that's happening there, the data, the process, the people, how that translates to solutions and now what you're actually providing to customers, and that there's not a disconnect in, well, sales told me this, and you get to your product and you're like, that's not what I thought I was getting. So my job is that alignment between those, and then doing the same thing for our customers, right? They're all looking for what's a unified process, right? What metrics should I be tracking along the way and not get distracted by shiny objects? My job is to be a left-brained marketer, is really the way that I've described it a lot lately. Is there's right-brain creatives and they can make something beautiful, but my job is to make sure it works, and the how, not the why.
Got it. So let's say from an agency perspective, like what are your duties there, right? And then how would you recommend somebody institute those for their agency if they don't have that title?
Yeah, a chief revenue officer, right, usually is kind of a combination role where I came from working in marketing and sales a lot. I was a marketing background person, and then I kind of explored into sales. I've always loved technology, so it was a natural progression to CRO as my path forward, where I've seen companies who don't have a CRO usually have like a sales manager and maybe a marketing manager. They might have a CMO and a COO or a CFO. As long as there's someone who's caring for the operations and the underlying foundations, as well as who's tuned into what you're marketing, what you're saying, the communication and the message, somebody's marrying those together in a way that keeps everybody on the same page and everybody happy, then you can do it without a CRO. But I see more and more companies going that way, where they are getting it under one person who has like a head of marketing, a head of sales, a head of partnerships, a head of solutions, that they're kind of all coming to before it goes to like a CEO or a CFO.
Yeah, and I've noticed, there's CMO, sales directors. I think it all depends on the organization, but the way that I look at it is revenue officers, which I fall in that category. It's revenue, right? Yeah. Profit is a concern, but it's not my concern, right? It's something that we need to figure out. Would you say it's the same with your role at your agency?
Because we're focused on revenue operations, what we're looking at is profitable revenue. So we still keep profit and revenue hand in hand with everything that we do. And it's drilled down all the way through. That's kind of just our culture of our company, that we're looking for it as, what is the ROI of every action that you're taking? And how does what the graphic designer does play into what happens in marketing as a whole, what happens to the company as a whole, that you each have an element of the business you're responsible for, but you're not in your own little world. Like, what you do has to provide revenue that's profitable, that helps grow the company so that you can get paid more, right? That you have job security, you're happy in your role, and you can allow it and to evolve and be what you want it to be. If everyone's running around trying to find, well, this made a lot of money, but it costs an insane amount, it's not sustainable, it's a flash in the pan, then we did a lot of work for maybe a lot of sleepless nights and maybe a lot of heartache, and not anything that we could sustain.
What's the system that you guys put in place to do that?
So we're, like I said, we're revenue operations. So we are really focused on KPIs. We use managed dashboard solutions through a company called Aviz. And we build dashboards for every segment that everyone in the company has access to. We have full transparency with our team that they can go in and see, here's how what I did affected the next stage. Social media, right, feeds up to marketing, feeds up to the revenue operations, feeds up to a large company dashboard where they can see what they're doing and how it affects everyone. You can't, until you become this kind of data culture centered and transparent company, you can't create the transparency that you actually need and get everybody on board on the same page. You can't have like 3 champions forward worried about revenue and profits, and the rest of them are all doing their own thing. It doesn't work like that. So transparency and access to the data when they need to see it has been important for us.
So let's say, like, attributing, like you mentioned, graphic design. How does graphic design like play into that?
Absolutely. So we will, if I'm looking at, you've created graphics for, social media, let's say. So the graphic designer is one of those roles that it's not just marketing, and it is affecting what's happening in marketing, but also you have a graphic designer who takes a look at your proposals and presentation decks and supports sales and looks at, that they're providing, outreach and email campaigns for customer reports and customer, newsletters and reach outs. That role is not just stuck in one spot. You are checking the boxes in lots of people's departments, and what you do is important to more than just I work in the marketing department. So we allow them to see what projects they've been working on in different departments, right? Your role is important. I mean, there was and get everybody on the same board with the company vision. There's an anecdote story that I've heard 100 times before about, walking into a huge cancer research facility and seeing the janitor sweeping the floors and going, "Oh, what do you do here?" And he's like, "I'm helping cure cancer." Mm-hmm. Like, you're sweeping the floors, but he has to do that. Mm-hmm. So that the floors are clean, so someone is safe, so that they can have a clean environment, so that the researchers can do what they have to do. Their role is important in the entire story. So making sure that they understand where they fit, they can see where they fit, they feel included, and not just "thank you for doing that task" and checking it off is important.
So you tie them in with the data.
Yes, sir.
So along those lines, so let's say that this might get a little bit technical. Let's do it. A lead comes in, right? Is that what you're basing it off of, lead and sale, and then everything literally just trickles off of that? Or there are some other leading metrics that you use?
Yeah, so we identify quality focused metrics and profit focused metrics in like 7 stages of a buyer journey. So whether you subscribe to funnels or flywheels, like, we know we're talking about the same thing. Right. Yeah. So we assign metrics in profits and quality for awareness, right? To inquiry, to conversion, but then also in satisfaction numbers, then in retention numbers, expansion numbers, and advocacy. So it's not just about, did you generate a brand new lead or get new eyeballs that converted in the next stage to get leads? We're also focused on how did what you did affect our conversion rates and satisfaction rates, so that we increase the lifetime value of our customers, and that we got more referrals from them that were shorter sales cycles because of a transfer of trust, and it wasn't starting over from the beginning. Everything that you do, from the graphic design to the CEO, affects all 7 stages of that buyer journey. So we make sure that they see that, "Oh, I didn't generate a lead." That's not your responsibility. Your responsibility is all along this path. And sometimes I'm going to ask you, like, I see this a lot with poor freelancers and a lot of agencies, right? I got hired to write 4 blogs, manage 2 social profiles, right? And manage their website. But you spend all your time on a customer portal rebuild for a client and sending out hiring messages on LinkedIn because they're trying to hire developers or whatever. You spent no time on any content that talked about generating new leads, and then your client is upset with you because there's no ROI in that. Well, that's not where your money was spent. It was spent on these other funnels. So you have to look at different metrics. You have to look at different ROI numbers, because you probably increase the lifetime value of their current customers and help them upsell or cross-sell. That's why they wanted you to build the portal. That's why they wanted you to write content. That's why they wanted you to help with hiring, so they could improve retention of their clients now, because they had people to do the work. So making sure that everyone sees how they affect all of it, and not dropping all of their responsibilities and their value in you generated a new lead, that's not sustainable.
So what does a client report look like? Is it like this? Is it just some high levels? Because we've always had issues in the past where it was like, "Oh, there's just this burying of data." So it's like, no, it's just custom. All right, this is all I care about, guys. This is all I need to see. And that's the approach. What do you recommend?
Yeah, we're big on making sure you have levels of data based on who's looking at it. How many times have I been in a meeting with the CEO, and the first thing they ask is, "How many new Facebook fans do we have?" That's not a relevant piece of information for that person, but it is absolutely relevant for the social media manager, right? Who's managing those day-to-day posts to see organic growth over time that leads to inquiries, leads to, engagement, leads to all those things. But it has nothing to do with what the CEO maybe needs to see. So making sure you identify in the beginning, what are the things you need to see, but what are the metrics below it that are going to feed that number so that when they ask, right, you can go back and say, well, this is how it's performed over time if we need to dig deep and dive deep in here. So build layers of those dashboards, layers of, KPIs. And that's one of the very first things we do with every single one of our customers is we look at the funnel, the flywheel, and go, okay, what things matter in these 7 stages? What things are we going to be doing that will affect any of those, and divide and conquer which things do we need to report on a quarterly, annual basis.
What platforms are your favorite to use to do this?
One I mentioned earlier, Aviz. That I love that one because it's a managed dashboard solution versus going to, something like even a Domo or like Tableau where I've got to hire somebody to build that for me. So we use Aviz because they will build it for us and it's pretty reasonable price compared to some of these others. And then we are really reliant on making sure that clients and us have the data from the systems that they use day to day. Like the dashboard's an aggregator of information. So having a CRM system in place, right, where you're actually using it, the team has adopted it, right? Sometimes that's the first step is, I'd love to know the lifetime value of my customers. I've never tracked anything ever. So can you tell me what that number is, right? There's a shift, a digital transformation, a turnaround that has to happen to change the way that you work. If you want that number, it's possible, but these are steps backward that you have to go through to get to it.
What types of budgets would you recommend to agencies if they're instilling a similar process that you have? How much should they charge for something like this?
Yeah, I know through Aviz, it's under $1,000 a month.
Yeah,
right? This is not a crazy lift, and I know they've got some kind of base that are under $500 a month to have a dashboard be managed, be available to you 24/7. So the more time and budget there is going to be spent in you determining what KPIs do I need to track. And then if you know what you want, right, and you know what systems you already have, like a company like Aviz can help you determine, do you actually have the information in place? And then put that little kind of they do this with us and go, that'd be great. I'd love to be able to tell you that, but we're going to put future state on this dashboard right now. And once you clean this up, then I can tell you what that is, because the math is easy, but you changing the way you work is hard and time consuming.
That's for sure.
Yeah.
So insofar as management budgets though, what would you recommend agencies charge their clients? Does this make sense for, a mom and pop sub $2,000 a month? Or would you say, hey, if you're going to take this type of intense approach, you should be charging in retainers of $6,000 plus?
If someone wanted to do this for their clients, do dashboards and things. Yeah. With our programs, we're working with larger scale B2B enterprises and things. So we start off with projects like that are one time at the beginning that might be anywhere from $15,000 to $30,000 to get started. And then after that is the base management of your dashboard, right, which might be $1,000 a month. If you want to charge it to your clients, you've got to find a system that works for you, but also serves the client, right? It can be easy, but it also needs to be impactful in a way that look, I put a bunch of numbers on a dashboard for you. This is, the standard things that you could pull out of any HubSpot or any, Facebook analytics. And there's no calculation. There's no way to pull insight out of it. If it's just making a report look pretty, right, that doesn't do what we need it to do. As a chief revenue officer, like myself or you have to be able to make decisions based on what you see and be able to see the story of the data. So, I've seen other consultants and stuff do something similar where it's, a couple $1,000s, it's usually a one-time startup, lay the foundation, and then more work might come out of that if your agency also does, CRM implementation and adoption, and you've got to make some changes here, or we've got to, change the way that you do sales period, and your sales process has to change, or QuickBooks is a mess and there's no way I can get anything out of there. Great, then let's find someone who can clean it up. There always leads to more work because there is a lot of work to do to be able to find metrics that matter in, actually matter, not just ones that sound good and make us feel good, but show us the reality of our company.
Yeah. And how do you take all this and attract new clients for Atomic?
We attract new clients for Atomic mostly through referral, right? It is when someone has worked with us, they're like, I know plenty of other companies who need to take a look at their metrics this way, to take a look at their revenue generation in the way that you're looking at it from this objective kind of trusted advisor view. We also participate a lot in kind of paid mastermind groups. So Vistage has been big for us, and like the ACG and a lot of these other where we're in the right room with a decision maker, with the one who's staying up all night, freaking out, can't sleep about these things. Those are the people I need to talk to. So that those kind of digital mastermind, groups, like I can look in HubSpot and see that 90% of my revenue, right, last year came from being in groups. I know where it came from. It's when I can develop long-term, lasting, trusting relationships with people, because it's not going to be from a LinkedIn inbound campaign of like, I sent a bunch of messages and I sent things through Sales Navigator, right? And they've never met me before. It is so much based on relationship marketing, building trust, working with partners. And sometimes it takes someone, 3 or 4 times, like, I keep hearing your name. Every time I ask how to fix this problem, someone says, go talk to Steph in Atomic Revenue. So I'm here finally. Like, it's usually about pulling teeth a little bit. And like, they tried to tell you, like, I know, I'm here now. Forgive me.
So you have this huge data set. How do you use that to upsell your clients?
We do 90-day cadences with all of our clients. So if we work, 12 to 24 months on a project every 90 days, the very first thing we do after the, hey, it's good to see you, right? Or how are the kids is, all right, let's pull up the dashboard, right? Let's look at it together. So it's not this is what I feel, right? Like, I just feel like I haven't heard from you guys in a while, right? Or I just feel like I'm not seeing as many posts, or I'm just, I don't know. Like, well, let's look and see the impact right now. ROI does not have to be a scary thing. Let's figure out what's working, what's not, review what we have done over the last 90 days, review what's going to happen in the next 90 days, and always looking at the data. Like, you cannot run your company by your gut, right? As much as some of us have made it very far by the seat of our pants and by just being an amazing lottery pick winner, but that's not reality and practical for the rest of us who are not blessed with those number picking skills. So it is about always coming back to the data. We always lead with it in their meetings. We lead with it in our own every Monday with our leadership meeting, at 9 a.m. That's the first thing we do. Segues. Hey, how's it going? Great. Dashboard review. Like, let's go look and see what's going on.
Who would you say are like the unhelpable in the B2B space?
Oh, man. I have found that some of the most painful places to work in the B2B space are the ones who, like, they've gone through a lot. They've been burned so many times by agencies that now they can't trust anymore.
Yeah, they're just like,
right? No, they're all right. I'm really expecting the world from you. I'm like, okay, well, let's back up a little bit because I'm only right. Our team is very good, right? But we have to make sure that we're a good culture fit. And usually we find that someone who's been burned over and over and over again, who comes into it with the wrong mindset of like, all right, I expect an ROI in 6 weeks and we'll talk. And like, okay, I want to get you an ROI. I'm not afraid of that word. We strive for 5.5 times ROI with everyone that we work with. That's what I'm looking for at a minimum. And I'm not scared to say that, but you can't put an unrealistic expectation on what has to happen, and you have to own what you have to do as well to make that happen.
So I'm ready to basically say that those companies out there that have been burned over and over and over again, they are the reason. It's not the agency.
Yes.
They are the problem. And Jon and I have done an entire episode on this, is that you have to be able to look in the mirror and ask, am I the problem? And, those people are unhelpable.
Right. And they're unhelpable right now, right? Like, all right, you need to do some soul searching, like take a vacation, walk away, like do whatever you got to do to get your head right, right? And acknowledge that you can't do any more than what you've done. And there's nothing wrong with making that admission of going, I have done great and I've gotten us here. And I know I've taken it as far as I am physically or mentally capable of doing. And that's fine. That's why there are agencies in the world. That's why there's consultants. That's why there are people outside of your bubble. So you can move forward. But if you are not in a mindset of, I want to learn, I need help, and I'm ready to listen to someone outside of me, then that is unhelpable.
Uncoachable. Yeah. And I would say I've met some people that have built fantastic companies up to a certain limit, but it's as far as their gut can take them, and they can't relinquish anything. They can't listen to anybody else. The moment that things start going in a direction they feel uncomfortable, they just pull everything back in. Yeah. And as Dave was saying, it's something I say all the time, like, all right, they're there for a reason. There's nothing we're going to do to change this. And I hope they have a breakthrough. I like to be the optimist. I hope they go on the beach and they, have a candlelight dinner that, opens something up that they've never had before. I'm not the guy to take them to that beach. I'm not the guy to light that candle. And I've come to terms with that. Otherwise, we become the abused spouse in this relationship, and we keep just throwing stuff up against the wall, and it never sticks. They're never going to be happy.
Right. So we're going to let them find another path forward, right? And I'm not going to lose sleep over it, and know that I'm perfectly fine with saying, I can see how frustrated you are, and I know that this has been hard for you to find the right support. It seems like we need to reevaluate what you actually need, because it may not be what you're asking for. Maybe it's not an agency like ours, right, that you're looking for, right? Maybe it's, we need to talk about culture. Maybe we should just go hire, a different tax person or a CFO or anything else outside of, like, a lot of times people come looking, I need leads, right? I need revenue, right? Revenue operations. Okay, this might be internal, and I can't fix anything if this is internal and we don't have our culture right and our people right. I can't touch the tech, doesn't matter.
Oh yeah, we've seen that where it's just like, okay, I mean, all we're going to do is make this ship sink faster if we pull in as much attention as we can, because you guys have some serious problems here.
Right. Mm-hmm. So partners are fantastic for that. They're like, great, this is not us, but here are like 5 people I know who definitely might be able to help you. So, and they're specially equipped and trained to have that conversation with you, and it's not me.
What would you say to agencies that aren't as data centric, that want to embrace that and want to, go down that path?
I think there's room for everyone in this club, right? I think that if that's what you want to do, then go for it. There's so much information available to you, right? Free academies, but it's more of, you can't be the one person trying to champion it forward. You can't be the CEO and say, now, tomorrow, everyone's going to be data centric. And you can't be, a sales manager and say, great, everyone tomorrow is going to be data centric. Like, know that this is an undertaking and a whole shift that has to be embraced by every member of your team. This is not something that you can do alone, even if you run the company, right? You can present it like, this is something I've been thinking about, right? Find the right books, find somebody else, another company who's gone through that transformation to walk you through what it was like. What do they do? But that's my biggest advice is, if it's just you, start talking to other members of your team about it. Like, this has been on my mind. What do you think, right? Do you think that would make sense for us? Do you think that, right? How would you use it? Would this be helpful if we could get this kind of information forward? You need to have everybody on board, or it's just not going to work. It's another failed attempt, another burned agency, but just internal this time.
Yeah. And I think, Dave, you're the one that told me that you did this, you guys did something for Ford or something. You had all this data and nobody would even accept it or something.
Yeah, I worked for a business intelligence company that built essentially dashboards, but we consumed all their data, put it into this crazy formula stuff, and then predicted and did projections on their data. So it wasn't more about showing them where they were, but how to get where they want to go. And so we could show them, like, if they did 3 more oil changes a month, by the end of the year, they'll have, $400,000 more in revenue or whatever.
Yeah.
And this was rolled out for every dealership. And then they did a survey, and something like 60% chose their gut over what the business intelligence data would show them. But I think that speaks more to the type of person that would own a car dealership.
Absolutely.
So those are very gut forward people. So.
The guy likes to shoot from the hip.
Right.
Absolutely.
Are you dealing with those types of people though that will fight you on your data?
I've only had one, right, over the last year that has fought me a little bit on the data, but because we spend so much time, and this is our culture. This is what we lead with. Like we say, we're people, process, and data, right? So people know what they're getting into. I've only ever had one who's like, I don't believe that data. It's like, it's from your system. There's no calculation here other than I pulled it directly out of your system, right? Or like, so it's like, but this was unfortunately someone who had been burned multiple times. So the switch here was, instead of putting it in the dashboard system, we just went back to, let's go look at it right live in the system instead, because there was a disconnect of seeing it in her system versus our system. So we just pushed it back, and so she could see it right where it lived originally, first and foremost, so she could trust it more. This is mine. I am the only one who manages this. I'm the only one who touches this data. So I can trust it. So she could trust herself and not us. So it was just a matter of the way that it was presented to get us back on track.
What do you say is like the future? Like what's not happening now with data and systems that you either A, want to have happen or you predict is going to be down the future?
Oh, man. Oh, I'm going to have to think through this one for a second. I mean, we're one of those companies that's pretty transparent with our data. So I would love to see more of that. Because just talking with colleagues in other industries, right? People I grew up with, every military kid ever, right? Depending on what job they have, they feel a little bit more like, I work there, right? I've been there for a while. I'm looking for stuff, right? They don't feel connected in a way. They're not seeing the impact. I would love to see more of that. That would be my wish, is that people see what it is that you as an individual, you as a team, right? How do you impact the rest of everyone else? Because it is about improving outcomes for everyone. So being like in our office, when we actually get to actually work in the office, one of our core values and differentiators is on the wall, and it says that we are unabashedly pro-profit for you and for us. So I want people to be able to look at the data and see, like, this was a good decision for us, and it was a good decision for you. It was a good decision for our family, right? And without that transparency of data, that's just we put it on the wall, right? And we tell people that, but it's not real. Like when you have to put integrity on the wall, like that's questionable to me if you had to put that you do what you say you'll do on the wall to make it true, right? So actually be transparent with your data.
So when it comes to like the profitability, that's an interesting question. So do you get into your clients' profit numbers? Like, what their margin is?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. With what we do in revenue operations, it's very much like, think about the car dealership, right? I took my business to the dealership and it makes that clunking noise every time I turn to the left and it's leaking something purple. I don't know. Do we need more leads, right? Like, okay, well, let's do a diagnostic. We call it quite literally a revenue diagnostic on your business. And I need to see financials. I need to see your roster, your organizational structure, your comp numbers. Like, I need to see your process for everything. How long has this been in use? What tools do you use? Like, everything. Otherwise, I can't give you a good recommendation. If I'm not caring for the people that are involved, the processes that you use, the industry that you're in, the regulations that you might be under, right? And the reality of where you are in business and what's actually happening, I cannot help you, right? I owned a digital marketing agency for a number of years before I came to Atomic Revenue. And that was the biggest pain point for me as an agency owner. In marketing, stuck there going, I have done everything I can for your website and SEO, and we're doing content and we're generating leads, right? And they're like, there's no ROI in that, right? Like, it must be you. Cut, line item, gone. And you're like, okay. And then you find out later as you dig into more companies, well, your follow-up process is broken. Those leads are going into someone's email inbox and not into a system, and it's waiting for them to distribute it to the person to follow up. And the timeline there is destroying follow-up so that you can close the sale. Those people were already engaged with someone else because you took too long. That had nothing to do with marketing and everything to do with process and the sales and operations and tools and tech. So marketing is always going to lose in that scenario as an outsourced agency. So when I came to Atomic Revenue, I was like, yep, this is it. Thank you. Like, my nightmare and heartache is over because I can see everything and I know where the real problems are.
Right on. No, I love that thorough approach. I think ours is a bit more simple. It's yeah, like granted we want you to make a profit, but that's on your end. Like we're a marketing agency. So it's like we're gonna bring in the revenue. So it's like but I love that you guys get that deep. And I think some of our reluctance is some clients are really pushed back where they're like, hey, that's not your responsibility.
Of course.
And I think we just adopted that. It's like, okay, all right, yeah, it's not.
And there's nothing wrong with that, right? If that's where you want to be, and like we know marketing inside and out, and that's what we're great at, then live right there as long as you're having the conversation and the client isn't now putting unrealistic expectations on you. Because a lot of times what I experienced myself was they expect you to be the saving grace, right? You get the ones who's like, this is my last $100,000. Like, let's make it happen. I'm like, fantastic. I can do what I can do, but the rest of this is up to you. And if you don't have that very clear, like, here's what we're going to do. And that means that the rest of this is you follow up and you're going to run these pieces and, you're going to deliver on your promises. As long as they know their role in that and it's not all on you, then you're absolutely fine. But when I was young, even younger, right, running my agency, my young 20s, right, I didn't have the fortitude to be able to tell somebody, an owner in their 60s even, right, you feel disconnected, like I'm new and I don't feel like I can tell you that. But now I have no issue like going in as Atomic Revenue, we're a revenue operations firm. I got to know how it all works to be able to say, great, we will help you with this piece. You're going to do that piece. The partner and the vendor is going to do that piece. You're going to hire someone to handle this. We're going to delegate, and we know who owns which parts. And we know that it's not all reliant on one person, one entity, one campaign that's going to save everything. Because I had a client not long ago who hired an agency, had a beautiful website built, and it really was beautiful. And they came and said, great, now we want to take these assets that we have and create a campaign around, generating inbound leads and inbound marketing. And we have this holistic approach. So I was like, okay, we can take a look. And we just had an intro discovery call. We talked about it for a while. And I asked, why were you so focused on inbound marketing? And he goes, well, we built a new website, right? That's the thing. That's what people are doing. We need to adapt and change the times. It's like, I appreciate that you're paying attention to what's going on in the world, right? That things are changing to virtual digital selling, right? But what they were selling, they were such a niche, very specific engineering company that those buyers are not on social media. Those buyers are not reading content the way that they wanted to write a couple blogs a month and have it be inbound marketing. We talked more about where their current customers come from, and they come from referral. But they've been around for 10 years. They were making, $20, $30 million a year, doing well, but writing on only being referral based. They had no follow-up process. They did no customer marketing, no upsell and cross-sell, no referral program, no follow-up, no customer appreciation day, like none of that, focused on really putting a process behind you're flying by the seat of your pants and you're living on their good graces because they love you so much. Like that's not a bad problem, but we could generate so much more profit out of putting a process behind customer marketing and appreciation, referrals, and advocacy than how hard we're going to have to work and how long we're going to have to work to start with nothing in inbound, right? You want something in 6 months, it will not happen. I'm telling you to spend it here and then use some of the profits there. That's fun money now because you didn't even expect to have it. We can try something new and give more time for that to play out because it's not going to happen as fast as you want.
So what percentage are actually just following this process? Like that's, yeah, like that to me, like, I'll be frank, I'm kind of like, okay, it sounds too good to be true because just having clients, and I love clients, right? But they're humans like me. And they're like, that's not important to me right now. This is.
Absolutely. And that's fine. And that particular client, right, or prospect who went through the discovery call didn't choose us, right? Straight out, it was just like, no, we invested in this website. I want to get an ROI out of it. I've got to make this work. I'm like, absolutely, go for it. I was like, but I would be doing you a disservice, right, if I took your money and ran with it. So I'm comfortable with that, not putting our company on the line because this is the way that we do it. This is the methodology. This is what's proven to work for our clients and the way we work, right? If that's not right for you, that's totally your decision.
Good on you for sticking to your guns.
Yeah, which was a hard thing to do, right? And it's like, oh no, revenue, right? But at the same time, they've sent more referrals and been a better like reference point for us than some of our long-term clients, because they're willing to say like, she told me no, right? And they're straight shooters. So they'll be like, well, if it's not a good fit, she'll tell you. Right. So they know that I'm not going to take their money. I'm not going to swindle them in anything. So I built up an incredible amount of trust in that moment, which was terrifying for me because I'd only been with Atomic Revenue for maybe a year or so. And I was getting newer into sales and going, no, this is not right. But it's now 5 years later and I still hear from them. And I still get, validation when I see them at CEO groups and things and like, hey, how's it going? Right. Oh, I told Jon he needed to message you. Fantastic. Thanks, man.
And they're still not a client though after all that time?
No, they're not. And they did wind up hiring a marketing agency and then it didn't work, right? And they decided to take in-house and hire like a customer success manager and go that route. So I was like, all right, you still took it to heart. But you know what? It worked out all in the end.
Right on. But like the others though, like just like your current clients, you build this plan and then they all just follow it? Like
no, we went to work and humans showed up as like, if you haven't read that book, the human team, like that's her thing. Like I went to work and humans showed up. Like, yes. So not all of them do right at the gate. Yeah. It is a hard thing. We're talking about turnaround and total transformation of the way that we think and work. So we have to have those 90-day check-in and quarterly cadences. This is not a 6-month contract even. Like this is usually a 1.5 to 2 years of working together before like we kind of work to kind of graduate where you don't need us anymore, right? Where you keep the dashboard and we'll check in every once in a while and just be another pair of eyes when you need it. But they're working towards a goal. The companies we work with are either trying to be acquired, right? They're trying to like pay themselves more. They're trying to retire. They're trying to, build up the next generation, but they can't do it because everything's in the owner's head. I've always done it this way. I don't know how to change, right? I don't know how to move forward. So we come in and help them adapt to what's coming, right? And be able to take the information out of their head and adapt it to what is going to help them grow into that next stage. So we have to check in every 90 days. We assign, an account manager. We call them a revenue operations director, right? Who is their point of contact, who talks to them every single week, keeps things on track. We have an accountability partner above that person, an engagement partner in charge who checks in on an executive level, makes sure that we're staying in touch and we're providing more information, right, about why we're making those decisions. You spend a lot of time in the why. Not just here's what you're going to do and here's the plan. Why are we doing it that way? Why do we recommend you do it that way? Right? Why should it be done in-house by you and not outsourced to a freelancer? Right? Which things could absolutely be outsourced to a freelancer? Which things should probably come to us so we can power through it? And which things sometimes it's just about validating. I've done this a lot where we worked with a marketing agency and they're like, they just don't get it. Like they just won't do what I'm telling them they have to do. It's because they don't trust you. Like they think you're doing great work, but you just want to sell them the next thing. So let us do a diagnostic, an audit, and help you determine, like, is that actually the right thing to do? From your expertise, it is, but you may not have all the information. And they're holding back because there's something else that you don't know. You don't know that they're also in the middle of this acquisition conversation, so they don't want to put more money into building a brand new website because in 6 months they won't have to worry about it anymore, and they're just not going to tell you until your contract ends and they don't renew it. So
yeah, that's what I was thinking. Like, yeah, because the jarring emotional things that have to happen to move somebody in the direction that they need to move in, especially when you're dealing with ownership because it's their money. Like that's always the worst because it's so personal to them. And they're going to go home and say like, oh, I spent $12,000 on this today. Whereas it's somebody else. It's just a budget line for them. And like, all right, well, we'll see how it happens, when the quarter ends.
Right. Yeah. And I've had that very conversation with a client who, they're large publicly traded. And so like, yeah, let's give it a go. Let's try it. And I'm like, wow, what a weird way to talk about it. Because I'm used to more talking to owner operated companies in like this $10 to $80 million range. And then you get the one who's like, it's a line item. They're like, yeah, we could try that. Sure. Let me know how it goes. Like, wow, it's a very different mindset.
On to the next one.
Yeah, exactly.
So what would you say to agencies that, like, I guess if you were to look at agencies, what do you think that they're doing wrong today that you think they could potentially do better based on what you guys are doing?
Based on what we're doing, the biggest thing I see with the agencies that we partner with a lot, who kind of come in and go, help, like, let's be partners, like, let's figure this out, is that they're trying to sell on what they can accomplish. A lot of times is we have all these services in-house, right? We're a one-stop, full marketing stop, full shop of everything you need, but they're not talking to them in the way that they actually care about, right? I don't need to know like copywriting and all this. I need to know what outputs, right? What does that do? You can help me generate leads. You can help me close sales, right? You can help me get more referrals. How does what you do affect those things, right? What it means to have you versus what checkboxes. I'm more often than not, you go to someone's front page of their website and they list off, here are all the things that we can do, but not here's what it means to have us on your team, right? Here's real life results, right? Case studies are phenomenal, but also pull it out, right? Here's what people said. Here's the numbers, like impact, like that I made on this person's company. I saved this CEO 12 hours a week, right? Which was a give back of time, which is opportunity cost, right? Which is them. They're also the number one seller. So now they can go out and close more deals and spend less money here, right? That is impactful. And that if you're trying to attract, you need an owner to make a decision. They don't actually care, unfortunately. Like, as brutal as that may sound, they don't actually care about the posts that go out on social media or that you can run ads. They care about what comes after you run the ads.
Mm-hmm. They just want to know how it tastes. They don't care how you make it.
Exactly. Yes. And the ones that do micromanage it right there, because there are definitely those, don't go there. Like, they're not focused on the right things, and nothing you do, those are the ones who've been burned, right? Because they didn't get what they needed out of their contract. So they take it down to, you didn't check the boxes. So that must be why it didn't work.
Right. And there's some people that just don't understand that they hire somebody based on a what, right? This is what I want you to do. And they hire you and they want to tell you how to do it. And
yes,
it's a conversation that's an uncomfortable one that you have to have. Some people embrace it. Some people fight it, but they go into the category that we mentioned earlier.
Absolutely.
So what have we not talked about today that the world should know about?
Oh, man. That's a hard thing. I think we've covered a lot, right? We talked about data and RevOps and growing agencies. And for us, that's the bread and butter. Transparency into a company, finding the process, the data, and the how to get things done, right? Here's how we're going to do it, right? And here's what you need to do to make it happen. So, I mean, that's the biggest thing I can really give to another agency owner, is to focus in on the outputs, right? The outcomes of what you can do, and you'll have so much better conversations with prospects, with your clients now. Even if you pivot mid-conversation, be like, yep, we did all those things, but here's what it meant to have us this quarter. You're going to get them to buy more, and you're getting them to stay with you longer. So.
Right on. And how can people get a hold of you?
Well, I am all over social media because I am a millennial and I am digitally inclined. So you can find me anywhere as long as you search for my name. So LinkedIn is my number one social platform. Just search for Steph Hermanson. I'm right there. And of course, atomicrevenue.com, or just shoot me an email. It's super simple. It's steph@atomicrevenue.com.
Awesome. Steph, thank you so much for joining us today. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
Boom. Hope you enjoyed our episode. Please subscribe and review wherever you can. And if you would like to join the Digital Mastermind, go ahead and shoot me an email at jon@digitalmastermind.com, or visit us at digitalmastermind.com. We'll see you next time. Thanks. Bye now.